I'm going to teach you how to get plastered. Right, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to do plastering, or rather, well, how I do plastering. There are many different ways. Probably be some people they go, nah, you've done that wrong. But the fact is, at the end of the day, it works for me. And everybody has their own unique different styles and textures and all that sort of jazz and crap. So follow my step-by-steps and I'll show you how to plaster. Well, I'm going to plaster ceiling. So whatever you're plastering, same thing. Ceiling, walls, plaster the floor. Good luck with that last one. But nonetheless, it's all the same thing. So first thing we've got to do is make sure that the area is actually protected, i.e. get all your dust sheets out so you don't get all that lot covered in plaster, because it does half penetrate. And even though if you do get on your appliances, on your new sofa which you just got, pretty best to cover that up because the wife will do her nut. But nonetheless, if you do get it on any sort of fabrics, the best thing to do is to sort of get your trowel with a little bit of plaster on it, dab it on and actually pour off, then let it dry. Don't try and rub it in, don't get a wet cloth, let it dry. Get yourself a hoover and you'll be able to suck it out without any problems. Now let's dust sheet the area. Now that's done, next stage is a very important stage. Put the kettle on. Get rid of Now, very important stages this is, very important, and this is all must listen to. Make sure you keep the humidity high within the room which you're working in. So this room here, I've got actually a bucket of water sitting in the room. It's actually sitting right down there, and that's actually slowly releasing moisture within the room. Now that's very important, because if you start doing your plastering in a dry environment or on a hot day, you'll find your plaster will go off really quickly. So the more moisture you can get into the room, the better, because that means it gives you more time to work with the plaster, especially at the very important learning stages which you're doing right now. So that's the first stage. Second stage, make sure your doors and windows are shut, because again, you want to keep the humidity within the room. Once you've done the plastering, you can open up your doors and windows, get the air through, pull the moisture out the plaster, so then you can actually start working and actually get the final finish which you need. They are the most important things. So what I'm going to do now is get all the tools I need to do this job and then show you the next stage. Off camera, I've just done some pre-prep. I've dropped all my lights down and I've actually sprayed the ceiling with some PVA. Now what the PVA will do, it will sort of seal the ceiling, help the plaster sort of stick to it a little bit, because obviously the PVA will go a bit tackier. One most important thing I actually forgot to mention was plastering tape. This is more like a mesh. You can get the stuff that actually looks like tape. I'm not a big fan of it, truth told. Reason being, because it's obviously tape you're plastering out, but tape, if that tape doesn't stick, then it starts to peel and look a bit crap. At least with this stuff, it's a mesh. So this actually becomes one with the plaster. Go over all the joint of the plasterboard with this tape. And once it's all plastered and polished off, hopefully the cracks won't reappear. Now these are the tools which I will use to do the plastering. These are the important, well they're all important, but these are your hook. So we actually put your plaster on your platform, you can then use that to scrape off. You need that, obviously your trowel, to actually then apply that on the actual ceiling. I got two smaller trowels here. One because I find this one glides through the plaster a bit better and breaks up any sort of lumps and bumps that you got, but ideally that's what your drill and mixer's for. This to me is a must, because that really gets that plaster nice and smooth. And obviously this one's purely just to sort of scoop it out, put it into my hole. You need a cloth, obviously, when you want to wipe your trowel nice and clean. Most importantly, your British gypsum multi-finish plaster. Apparently, which I found quite disgusting, actually not made in England. French! We'll sort that out when we leave. I got my plastering bucket, which obviously I'll be pouring the plaster into, then mixing it all up. And this is another bucket which I've kept. It's actually full of water. When I'm finished using this, get it in there, clean it all off. It saves it all gunking up later and causing problems. Most importantly, if you put too much plastering, you've got a nice bucket of water there just to pour in to top it up and get it all mixed in. I've got a garden weed sprayer here. Acts as a lubricant for when I polish off the ceiling, but you'll see more of that when we get there. But yeah, so these are the main sort of ingredients as such which you'll need to get yourself plastering. So what we're going to do now is mix up. Right, so how much water does one put in one bucket to make sure they got the right amount of water for the right amount of powder? Now with this big bucket, foot across, foot and a half across, something like that, I got roughly about 2 inches. That should be enough to do at least half a bucket, if not just a little bit more. If you start filling this bucket with half of water against half of finish, you have massively too much amount of water and a whole lot to be wasted. If you're doing bonding on the other hand, then yeah, bonding requires more water for the mix. Finished plaster or multi-finish requires surprisingly quite little. So what we're going to do now is pick up your multi-finish. This is where this comes into play. Get that to one side so you can actually grab it easily. Right, take your time with this because this is where a lot of dust is going to happen. See, now I'm starting to get a tiniest little bit of resistance in there, and the plastering is starting to sort of clump up. Now at that point I'll add just a little bit more, just ever so tiny amount, and then stop there. Now I've probably used about half a bag of multi-finish so far, but hopefully you can see it's still quite watery in some areas, but in others it's clumping up. That's actually what you want, because you know the clumpy bits will then take up the rest of the moisture for the rest of it. See, it's still quite loose. Clean that off. So you get your mixer and drill. I always hold it at the bottom, like use it as a guide, because otherwise you put too much strain on the chuck and bug your drill up. And there we are. And then you put that in the bucket. See, saves you doing it later. And there we are. But that is what you want. It still holds itself, but falls off rather easily. Perfect mix. Right, what I'm going to do now is just get a little bit of plaster. Not a great deal, just literally a smidgen. See, it's on there. See, it holds in place. Don't know if you can see that, but holds in place. Doesn't move too far. Now what I'm going to do is to go over all my weak points, where it's all cracked. Right, now that's done, I can actually get on with the actual plastering. This is the brave bit. We'll get your bolt, we'll get your trowel, and then at this one simple movement, swish up. Again. And that's pretty much it. Now you can see the first initial stage has been completed. Now what I'll do, I've got some plaster left over, so I'll be going over bits where it's a bit shallow, because ideally you want somewhere between 1 and 3 mil on your first coat. So that's what we're doing now. We're now going to leave that set just for the shine to be taken off, and then we'll give it another coat to make sure that what we put on there is truly smooth. Right, I've had to go all tidy up. The good thing about having a tidy up, it gives you that time for the sealing to dry. Now, it's not fully dry, and the best way to tell is if you push your fingers against, you should be able to leave some indents. So let's get on with the next mix. Right, now that the second coat's done, we've now got to let that dry. If you want to speed that up, you open doors and windows to get the moisture out. And then again, you work it again. Some time has passed now. What you want to do, you want to be able to touch the ceiling and ever so slightly be able to leave a mark. Once you can do that, that's the perfect time to then, this is where the sprayer comes into place, and then spray the ceiling, because this will act as a lubricant. But this is the stage now where you need to use a lot of shoulder power, because you want this ceiling to be smooth on this stage. So now what we've got to do, we've got to wait for that shiny gloss look to disappear. At that point we can go over the trowel again and give its final polish off. This is now ready for its polishing off stage. Now what we've got to do is literally make sure your trowel is nice and clean, and then you're pouring the plaster, but pushing up at the same time just to make sure it is fully smooth. Now hopefully you can see the difference between this bit where it is being polished and that bit where it's slightly rough. But if you can't see it, trust me, when you actually try it yourself, you do see a big difference. So there it is. That is the steps how you plaster. I've still got to let it dry. That could take a couple of days to do so. So until then, well, I'll be 2 days, but for you, be a couple of seconds. 2 days have passed now. I gave the ceiling a quick rub down. What I find with plastering is by getting rid of that shine, paint actually keys in a bit better. So that's what I've done. And as you can see, I've painted. I've installed my new chandelier, or chandeliers it's known in the real world, but I like them chandeliers. But that'll be it. My sitting room completed to start work on the next project, which I'm sure my wife's already lined up for me, but that's another story. So if you like what I've done, then give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, because there'll be way more excitable stuff along the route, I'm sure. Not guaranteeing you that. It could be all bag of shite, but I'm not very good at predicting the future. I'll see you guys in the next video.